happy new season and welcome to NUFC Matters. Each week I'll be working with Super Mac, Malcolm MacDonald, the former Newcastle United number 9 and club legend, and we'll be looking at what's going on at St James's Park. Malcolm's on holiday still this week, so I'll be taking your questions about what's going on at our club. I personally don't think there was a takeover at Newcastle United. I think the only time that we ever came close to a takeover was Amanda Staveley. I had dealings with Amanda, obviously got to know her and her team very well, and I personally felt that that was a good fit for the club. I felt that they'd done the due diligence, they'd sorted everything out as far as the financials were concerned. But as we all know from the article that George Culkin wrote up, there was 3 bids and those bids didn't suit what Mike Ashley was looking for. So this summer, obviously led on from the failed Peter Kenyon bid, BZG came in with an offer led to believe. There was lots of talks of sheikhs arriving at Newcastle Airport, but I wasn't convinced. I went out early on social media and said that I didn't think a takeover was imminent, and sadly I was proved to be correct. And the interview that Mike Ashley's just given now gives that impression that he could be here for a long time. I think what fans have to decide is, are you going to be here for a long time? Are you going to sit and put up with the way that Mike Ashley runs the club, or are you going to walk away? And it's a difficult choice. It's one which I've battled with myself, because I've been at the club since 1984 as a supporter. I've been at a lot of games home and away, and from my perspective, I've got a lot of loyalty points on my season ticket. So it'd be very difficult for me to walk away. I think a lot of people are looking for others to see what others are going to do. Are they going to walk away from St James's Park and chuck their tickets in? We have had many people do that, but not enough to make a difference. And I think you've got to ask yourself the question, is walking away really going to make any difference to Mike Ashley? Because the money that he gets from the Premier League is vast. And as long as he's in the Premier League, then I don't think any boycott could affect him. But for me, the boycott, which is taking place in the next 7 days, is something which I'm going to support. Boycott Arsenal. I think it's a great idea, but we don't do these kind of things very well as a unit. The fans are completely divided, as you've seen on social media over the summer, and it's very difficult to organise supporters. And I think any group that does try to do it fails to realise that social media is just such a small percentage of our support. It's not a massive percentage. So you're not talking to the masses. And if you're going to organise a mass protest or a mass march or a mass demonstration, you have to get out to the wider Newcastle United public. And protest groups that we've had so far just don't do that. My thoughts on Rafa's departure, it was always going to happen. He had a 3-year contract which he saw out. I knew he wouldn't walk away, and I think Mike Ashley knew that as well. I think when the Spanish job came up 12 months ago, I think Newcastle United were prepared to let him leave then, but he didn't want to go, which showed his loyalty to the club. I don't think he ever saw himself as the Spanish national manager. He wanted to concentrate on trying to keep Newcastle in the Premier League and continue with the project. But very disappointed to see him leave. Obviously, I had a close relationship, not just with him, but with his team. They were kind enough to invite me in as a fans representative, to somebody who could introduce supporters to him and his inner circle, and to do a lot of good. We introduced him to people like the food bank, which is massively beneficial towards their cause. Obviously, we introduced them to fanzine editors, writers, people who were looking for help with charity work. It was just a fantastic experience for me, and on a personal level, very disappointed to see him leave. With regards to the football club, I think we've lost a massive opportunity to take the club to the next level. I think the relationship between Rafa and the owner was never the best. Rafa had always had ideas for his project. He wanted to take us to the next level, not just on the first team basis, but with the academy as well. And I just feel that the owner's vision is completely different. He doesn't see the need to invest in the facilities. He thinks the facilities are good enough. By the facilities, I mean St James's Park and the academy. The academy hasn't really been improved in any way, shape or form since it was opened in, back in 2004, 2005. So that for me, spelt the end really, because Rafa just didn't see any vision, any progress. And I think the lack of money that was made available in subsequent, transfer windows whilst he was here was obviously going to affect Rafa's, feelings towards the owner. And, the owner just didn't seem to care. And I think it was a battle. It was a battle which, Mike Ashley was never really going to win. Rafa Benitez was never going to win. And the only people who suffer are the fans, and it's at the detriment of the club that we've lost a world-class manager. So, very upset to see him go. But that's football. Nobody is here forever, and nobody is bigger than the club. But Rafa goes for me alongside Kevin Keegan, Joe Harvey and Sir Bobby Robson as one of the best managers we've had at the club. Well, I felt it was a very underwhelming appointment when Steve Bruce was named as the manager, but it seemed to me that we had struggled to bring somebody in. We don't know, whether Steve Bruce was on the list or not. We only have to take the club's word for that. I've heard rumours that Steve Bruce approached the club for the job himself. Again, it's just rumours. We don't know whether that's true. In the plus point, he's a Geordie. He is from the northeast. He claims to be a Newcastle fan. We don't have proof of that, but we know that his family certainly were Newcastle fans. He's come here with a track record in the Premier League which isn't the greatest, but it's certainly not the worst. So I think from my perspective, we could have had Joe Kinnear back at the club. We could have had Dennis Wise sitting in the hot seat. We could have had Mark Hughes. I don't think that would have gone down too well. Ian Holloway, although it would have been a laugh at the press conferences, I don't think having Ian Holloway as Newcastle manager would have pleased many people. But it's, it is what it is. He's here. He's at the club. We have no choice in the matter. That is down to Mike Ashley and to Lee Charnley who've appointed him. And, he has to get on with the job. I think one thing for me is that anyone who'd followed in Rafa Benitez's footsteps, it was always going to be mission impossible. He's not going to get the same kind of time as Rafa had, I don't think, from many supporters. I think everything he does will be looked at through a big microscope and will be criticised. But results is what will turn things around for Steve Bruce. If Newcastle go into the first part of the season and he wins more than he loses and has more points than Rafa did at certain stages of the season, then it's certainly going to be a case of Rafa who, because that's football. If he gets off to a bad start, similar to Rafa Benitez did last season with the fixtures that he had, and the fixture list again hasn't been too kind to us, he could be in a bit of a predicament. He could get a shock, and our crowd is not very forgiving when things don't go well. And I think that's the difference. I think with Rafa Benitez, he got the patience of the fans because he was a world-class manager, and everybody could see what was going on. They could see that the owner wasn't giving him any money to invest, and it was very much a case of make, do, and mend for Rafa. I think with Steve Bruce, I think he's been given some money to spend. He's spent £40 million on Joe Linton. He spent another 18 million on Maxim. He's brought Willems in, obviously, on a free transfer, signed a couple of academy kids for the under-23s. So he's already had more money to spend than Rafa could ever dream of in a summer transfer window. And, for me, that's going to be a major issue as well, because, should he get off to a bad start and Newcastle are rooted to bottom come October, people are going to say, well, this is all because of the appointment of Steve Bruce. So it's football. Steve Bruce knows that. I've listened to his press conferences, listened to what he said to the fans. If I had to give him any advice, it would be, stop playing the, I'm a Geordie card. It doesn't wash with people. We know where you're from. Just get on with the job. Don't praise the owner so much. The owner is not best friends with our supporters. We don't need to hear how good Mike Ashley is. We don't, need to see him flying into the training ground. And I think that was the one downside for me, that Mike Ashley flew into the training ground and he'd never been invited by Rafa, and he was enchanted by Steve Bruce and his attitude to the job. I think those kind of things are what will really wind supporters up, because, Mike Ashley owns the football club. He didn't need an invite to the training ground to go and see Rafa Benitez run a training session. Rafa said that quite clearly. So PR spin like that doesn't do Steve Bruce any favours. Come in, get on with your job. Forget about the Geordie thing, okay? You went and signed for Sunderland as a manager. You've knocked Newcastle back as a player. You knocked Newcastle back as a manager. Concentrate on what's important, Steve. That's getting results for Newcastle United this season. That's all you can do. If you do that, then, I'm sure there'll be a lot more people will have a lot more respect for you come the end of the season. I was disappointed to lose Perez and Rondon, yes, because I think at the back end of last season, with the addition of Almiron, we had a really, really, really good forward line. Rondon is something different, big lad, but very mobile and very, very skillful. So I thought, to keep a hold of him, and he wasn't, too old to sign, I thought would have been a big asset to the club. And he grasped what it meant to play for the fans. He wore the number 9 shirt with pride, and I really, really was disappointed to lose him. Perez, not so much, because Perez wasn't a season-long player. He wasn't somebody who would give 150% season in, season out. His goal record tells you what he was. He was somebody who was capable of getting 10 goals a season, 9 goals a season in a Premier League, which is no mean feat. He's still quite young, but he was somebody who just didn't really make it as a top player at Newcastle. But £30 million for somebody that cost us roughly £1 million from Tenerife was a great bit of business. And ultimately he wanted to move on, and he wanted to make something different in his career. So we wish him well, but yeah, disappointed to lose him. And that's football at the end of the day. When you have you have players that don't stay forever. So wish him well at Leicester, just not when he's playing us. I don't really know a great deal about the new signings. We'll start with Joe Linton. It was, talked about probably about 2 years ago that he was a focus for Newcastle United's scouting team. And, I know that Rafa Benitez's team weren't too keen on bringing him to the club. But 2 years is a long time in football. He's had a little more experience, a few more games under his belt. Hasn't scored, a great deal of goals, hasn't been prolific. But what I've seen of him in the pre-season friendlies, and obviously I can only judge that on the footage that I've seen online and on television, he looks quite mobile, he looks quick, and he looks a handful. He looks like a younger version of Rondon. The big test, of course, will come in the Premier League. You can't judge how good a player's going to be when he's running around against Hibernian or St Etienne. It's when the real stuff starts. But positive. He looks really quick and looks a handful. So will he get the goals to keep Newcastle United in the Premier League? Only time will tell. £40 million, that's the big question mark for me. I do realise that money is out of control in football now, and you're getting ridiculous amounts spent for players. Is Harry Maguire really worth 80 million plus? I don't think so. But ultimately we've spent that money now, and that in itself for me was more about the owner sticking 2 fingers up at Rafa Benitez than it was about buying this player because he was worth 40 million. Maxim, fans have really seemed to get excited about him on social media. Again, know very little about him. Comes from the French leagues, wears a headband, which doesn't really endear him to me. That's just because I've got no hair. But it ultimately is a signing which looks as if it's going to excite fans. He looks as if he will get people off the seat. People have compared him potentially to Ben Arfa, which is a good thing and a bad thing. Ben Arfa certainly had his moments. Never forget that goal against Blackburn Rovers at St James's Park where everybody was out of their seat and it was a fantastic finish. But he was very frustrating, Ben Arfa, and if we're going to see the same from Maxim, then I suppose fans won't be too upset. Willems looks as if he'd just cover. We have needed cover at full back. Left back's been a problem for years. Right back hasn't been too good either. So to get any kind of cover and any kind of defensive cover at full back is a positive, and it's a new face. What he's like again, who knows? 2 academy players we've signed. Again, they're under 23s. They're there as development players. But then remember, Perez came in as a development player and got thrown in at the deep end. So, you know, it's interesting to see we spend money. Disappointing for me personally that Rafa didn't get that opportunity to spend money. If he'd had the opportunity to spend money, who knows where we would have been. But, you know, we've got to accept that Rafa's history now, and it's in the history books, and we've got to move on. I'd love to see a few more players added to the squad. I think that we could certainly do with another forward. Well, just a little footnote to NUFC matters that I recorded earlier in the week. Emil Kraft comes in at right back in the transfer window, and Andy Carroll returns. Seems to have sent social media into meltdown with a lot of Newcastle fans expecting Andy to be scoring a hatful of goals. For me, it's a big PR stunt by Newcastle United. He may come on if he's not injured and score some crucial goals throughout the season. I could be completely wrong, but it's no doubt a PR stunt in my mind, and that is the only reason that Newcastle United have brought him in. It is an extra body. A lot of people saying he's better than Joselu, so he's worth the gamble. It costs nothing. He's on pay as you play. All of that's correct, but for me, it just really just smells of a PR stunt. Newcastle really, with their tweet on the day, really confirmed a lot of that suspicion as well. The Boycott Arsenal campaign, which Empty for Ashley and the Magpie Group have been, you know, running for the last few weeks, is a great idea in principle. As every boycott has been, there's been talks of walking in late, walking out early. There's been marches on the ground. Obviously, I've been involved in numerous campaigns against this particular owner over the last 12 years. This one is something that everybody can do. You know, whether you've bought a ticket, whether you've wrapped your season ticket in, this is something that everybody can do. That can get involved, and you know, people might think it's daft that you've already paid for your ticket, but you know, just sit and watch it in a bar. You know, don't go to the game on this one particular occasion. I'm going to stick with me guns. I've agreed to support it. I am going to boycott the Arsenal game, and a lot of my friends are. We're going to sit and watch the match together. But you know, will it work in the long term? I'm not really sure. I feel that the owner is already laughing at us. There has been a significant drop in season ticket sales. But should the team get off to a really good start, then, you know, I don't expect anything other than virtually a full St James's Park for the rest of the season. And that's just because it's our club, it's our team, it's what we do. But there's no doubt that over the last 5 or 6 years, certainly with things really turning sour with the owner, that some hardcore fans have just decided to walk away. Some of them are watching non-league, some of them are just shopping in the Metro Centre with their lass. It's a devastating effect on our football club, and it's the long-term effect it'll have, because we are systematically losing generations of support. Because for every 1,000 fans that don't come, that's 1,000 kids that they're not bringing, and that will have a knock-on effect long-term for what, you know, what our football club is all about, and that's quite sad. What is the answer? If I had that, I would be a really, rich man. I would never have to buy a drink again in Tyneside. But, you know, I really don't know. Mike Ashley is a law unto himself. He's a multi-billionaire. He's somebody that, you know, is only interested in money. For me, Newcastle United Supporters Trust, have talked about fan ownership. They've pushed that on more than one occasion. And I think that might be the avenue to go down. But it's getting the fans united behind one particular group to get that initiated and get it started and get the ball rolling. But it's not a pipe dream, but it's something which, you know, could easily be achievable. It's been achieved abroad, but could we be the first, big name Premier League team to do it? I think it's possible. At the moment, though, I think all we can do is sit back and watch and wait to see what happens with Mike Ashley's other business assets, because, you know, he may need to sell the football club at some point. He's had a big tax bill, obviously, which has been well publicised. Other businesses that he's bought haven't been as big a success as Newcastle United has been to him. And I think that could be something which initially may push him. But I think ultimately as well, we do need somebody who's going to come in and buy it. We need somebody who is willing to come in and spend the money that Mike Ashley wants for the football club. We came close with Amanda Staveley. We haven't come close since then. And that's what we need, you know. We need somebody to come in and give him the money that he wants and give him what he wants and get him out of our club. Prediction for the game of the weekend, which Malcolm and I always do, and we're never far off from each other. Malcolm's not here this week, but I would say Malcolm would probably go for a draw because he's an ex-Arsenal man as well. Obviously, and he's well thought of down there. They invite him every season for the game, and he's the legend, goes on the pitch. So I would imagine Malcolm would probably go for a draw. But for me, I think Newcastle will lose by the odd goal. I can see Newcastle scoring. Joe Linton's obviously in good form. You know, he's scored in his last 2 games. Getting his home debut, albeit in the friendly, was important. But he certainly hit the ground running. So I can see Newcastle getting an early goal, but I can see Arsenal being too good on the day. I can see Arsenal winning 2-1. That's all from NUFC Matters for this week. Thanks very much for sending in the questions. If you want to send in a question or a suggestion for next week's show, then follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Just search up NUFC Matters. All shows will be loaded onto YouTube. Subscribe to NUFC Matters. Super Mac will be back next week, taking my questions and yours on all things Newcastle United. Finally, we're going to play out with a band called the Black Acid Mavericks. They're from Newcastle. Great bunch of lads. I'm sure you'll enjoy the music. And if you've got a band and you want to get some exposure for them, then send in your clips or your music to Facebook or Twitter. See you next week.
This is for the vigilantes, the anti-establishment, the pedantics in this garrison.